Welcome back to another video in our JavaScript course. Today we're going to learn about how to create comments in JavaScript so you can comment your code and let yourself or maybe other developers know what you're doing or what your code does. And then we're also going to touch on something called pseudocode that you can create with comments in JavaScript. And pseudocode isn't like official code, but it's a strategy that you can use to break down problems when you're programming and like logically go through them step by step so that you actually can like figure out how to do something that you want to do. Okay, and that might not make a lot of sense now, but later in the video it will, and it's a really important lesson that you need to learn like right away when it comes to learning how to program in JavaScript or any other language. You need to know how to break big problems down into small little chunks, small little problems that you can solve one by one, and then that way you can eventually build what you want to build, right? It's the same thing with CSS. If you took my CSS course, when you look at like a whole design and that might look big and complicated or like a multi-page website, no matter how big a design or a project is, it's just about breaking it down into small little chunks, and that's what pseudocode allows you to do. So let's get started here. So I'm in my folder, I named it YTJS course files. So you can follow along with me, make your own folder, title it whatever you want, or just copy everything I'm doing and code along with me. I'm going to make a new file here, and I'll call this one 2-JS comments. And then I'll also put dash pseudocode. So pseudocode is PSEUDO pseudo code.html. So kind of a long file name, but I want it to be descriptive because if you go back to this, I want you guys to know exactly what you're going to be looking at, okay? And then I'll go ahead and get my HTML boilerplate here. And I'm using Visual Studio Code, guys, and I'm using the code completion shortcuts. So yeah, hopefully you know what that is. I'm not going to go into VS Code, and I have videos about that on my HTML course if you want to go check that out about Visual Studio Code and code completion and all that. But so we got our HTML here. I'm going to just need to title the page JS comments and pseudocode. And then I'm going to launch the page here with my live server. And we'll look at it side by side, okay? Oops. All right, guys, so I'm not going to make an external file sheet for this lesson. I'm just going to write all of our JavaScript in our script tags. So let's create script tags here at the bottom. And first we'll talk about comments in JavaScript and how to make them. So there are two types of comments in JavaScript. There's single line comments and multi-line comments. So I'll show you the single line comment first. So let's just do that. Let's just make an alert in JavaScript like we did last time that just says hello, and we'll save. And then we'll see on our page here when we click into it, it comes up with our JavaScript alert saying hello. And then let's make another alert. And this one can just say goodbye. Okay, so now we have hello, we hit OK, goodbye. So they're both going. Now we can comment one of these out with a single line JavaScript comment by just doing 2 forward slashes. Okay, so that's a single line JavaScript comment. So another example, if you wanted to write some text like this is an alert. And then below we have our alert. Okay, so 2 forward lines is a single line JavaScript comment. And then I'll just put up here for an example, this is a single line JS comment. Okay. And then we can uncomment all this. I'm gonna hit command forward slash on my keyboard on the Mac, or you can hit control forward slash command and that'll get rid of the comments. It's like a shortcut. Or you can just go in and delete the slashes in front, get rid of that text. Okay. So single line comment, 2 slashes, double or multi-line comment is the same as CSS. If you took my CSS course, it's /* where you want it to start, and * / where you want your multi-line comment to end. And now you can put whatever you want in between these two things, you can write paragraphs if you want. And it's not going to count as code. It's just a comment. So put this is a multi-line JS comment. Okay. So single line, multi-line comments. That's pretty much it. Comments are really useful for like maybe reminding yourself, especially when you're new to JavaScript, like what your code is doing. And of course, it'll also be helpful if you're building a bigger project with multiple developers and maybe you need to comment something out to communicate with them or whatever. Okay. So now that you know what comments are, we're going to get into pseudocode. So pseudocode is just basically using comments to break down what you want to do in English and like logically step by step, so that then you can research and figure out how you have to write or what kind of JavaScript code you have to write to accomplish that. Okay. So when you get like a project, a lot of new developers, they just get overwhelmed and they're like, oh man, I know what I have to do, but it's just so overwhelming. I don't know how to write out those steps in JavaScript. So the good news is all of the answers are online for free, right? So you take a basic JavaScript beginner's course like this one to get the foundations. And then once you have that, and you kind of know what to look for, or like you have at least a basic understanding of how things work, you can Google your way through any problem and eventually like figure it out step by step. Like anybody can do this nowadays. You don't have to be some special genius anymore to be a programmer. Like as long as you just know how to solve problems. It's not about memorizing code. It's about knowing how to solve issues and problems. Okay, the code is a very small part of actually being a web developer is writing the code. So let's just to show you an example, we're gonna write a little JavaScript program here really quick. And if you're brand new to JavaScript, a lot of this code is gonna be like not make sense to you, but by the end of the course, it will. And this is just, again, to demonstrate what pseudocode is and how important it's going to be for you going forward in your whole web development career. So let's pretend like we got a project where somebody wants us to make a button on the page. And when that button is clicked, it'll change the background color of the page from white to green, we'll say, okay? Let's start with our first piece of pseudocode. And this first part of pseudocode, this comment, is actually going to be in HTML because the first step is we need to make a button, and we're going to do that with HTML up in our HTML. So I'll write an HTML comment, and I'll say create a button. I'm just going to leave that there for now. I'm going to complete my thought process and what I need to do for this, okay? Before I start coding anything, I want to plan it. So we have create a button there. That's going to be up in the HTML. And then after we create that button, we have to manipulate that button with JavaScript. So we have to find out how to select the button using JavaScript so that we can use it in our programming. So I'll put a pseudocode here that says select the HTML button with JavaScript. Okay. And then after we select it, we need it to change. We need to like activate it, we'll say, when we click it. So let's write another piece of pseudocode under here. We can go right underneath it. And we can say activate HTML button when clicked. Okay. And then after we click it, what do we want to happen? Well, we want the color to change to the background color of the page to change from white to green. So we'll say change color. And we'll say background BG color of page to green. Okay. And so now we have like an actual roadmap. Now we can feel better, even if we don't know how to do this. We can feel better that we can at least be on the right track to finding the answers through pseudocode, okay? Very important. So let's start with our HTML. Let's create a button. That should be easy enough. Let's create a button element here. And the text in the button will be change BG color. Save. Okay. And then I'm going to give my button an ID. Just like we would in CSS, we give CSS or elements in for CSS classes and IDs for styling. You actually do the same thing with classes and IDs for JavaScript. It goes off of classes and IDs, and that's how you select stuff in JavaScript and manipulate it with JavaScript. So that's why learning CSS and HTML first is so important, because that concept should already be really easy for you to understand, because you've been using it with HTML and CSS, right? So that's another reason why a lot of people say, hey, don't skip to HTML and CSS and go straight to JavaScript, and this is one of those reasons why. So if you're one of those people right now that has no idea what I'm talking about because you want to jump right into programming, I suggest you go watch my free HTML and CSS courses and get good at that first, okay? Anyway, I'm going to give this button an ID of button. I'll just say BTN for short. Whoops. Okay. So now we have our button here. Doesn't do anything yet. It's just an HTML button, but we're going to make this dynamic with JavaScript. So we need to now select the HTML button with JavaScript. So let's figure that out with Google. So let's say how to select HTML element in JavaScript. Okay. So let's go to W3 Schools. They usually have really good examples that are straight to the point. And here we go. So here's the example. Finding an HTML element by ID. Well, how convenient. We put an ID on our element up here, didn't we? We named it button. So it says here that you can do something where you put a keyword of const. And that const is a keyword that just means variable. So other programming languages, variable just means var. But in JavaScript, you can use keywords of const, let, or var. We'll get into that in a later video. But so const. So we're saying make a variable, and then you can name your variable whatever you want. Element is just a placeholder here. So we can do that, and then we put the equal sign, and then followed by this code, document.getElementById. So that actually makes sense, right? We want to select the document that we're working on, and we want to select it by the ID. And our ID name, in this example, it's intro, but we named ours BTN. So we would just put BTN there. So let's do that. So select the HTML button with JavaScript. We found that here, so let's say const. And we'll just call it BTN. We'll name the variable BTN the same as the ID, just to make things simple. And then equals document dot get element by ID. Oops. Dot get element by ID. And our ID name is BTN. So we'll just put BTN. And boom. So we've done our first step. Very cool. We selected our HTML button with JavaScript. We found that out. Now we need to just figure out how to activate the HTML button when clicked. So let's see. Activate HTML element on a click. Here we go. So let's look here. So this Stack Overflow says fake click to activate on click method. I don't know what that means. I'm a beginner. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. And look at that. We have W3 Schools again. Okay. So it'll show us a couple ways here. One way we can do it is by saying onClick equals my function. I don't even know what a function is, so that's confusing. Let's keep scrolling down and see what else they have. How about right here? Object.addEventListener click, keyword of click it looks like, and then my script. So that would be like a function. Okay. So that's what we have to do. So object, that's just the placeholder name. So the object, instead of object.addEventListener, we're going to use our variable of button, okay? Because we already selected, that's the button. Now this const, this BTN keyword represents this element now forever, whenever we're programming, okay? And at least in this application that we're making. So let's say BTN, and then we have to say .addEventListener. So it looks like when you want to click something, they refer to that in JavaScript as an event listener. Okay, interesting. And we'll get more into that in later videos. We'll have a whole lesson on that. So we'll say btn.addEventListener. And then we'll put the parentheses, and then we're supposed to put quotes, and then what we want it to do. So on a click, so we just put click. That's cool. And then this my script is just, so my script again, that's just a placeholder name for like a function. So don't worry about what functions are right now, but we're going to create one. I'm going to say function, and then parentheses, and then curly brackets, just like JavaScript. So again, there's a lot of similarities with the syntax with CSS. I mean, these curly braces. That's why I don't want to go straight into programming. So function, so within the curly braces, so like when we write CSS, whatever's in our curly braces is what the rules for whatever we're selecting. It's the same thing for a function in JavaScript. You write the code that you want to execute in the curly braces, and in this case, it's going to execute when we click the button, okay? So all the code in the curly braces, whatever we put in here is going to happen when we click the button. So we figured that out. And now let's bring this pseudocode up here. Because within the function, because we only want the background to change within the curly braces when the thing is clicked, right? So that's why we have to put whatever styling. We're going to have to figure out how to style the background with JavaScript, and we want that to execute only in when it's clicked in these curly braces. We don't want it to be green all the time, only when clicked. So let's go below that pseudocode. And now the last part is we have to figure out how to style something with JavaScript. Instead of with CSS. So let's see if that's even possible, right? So we'll say how to style an element in JavaScript. Let's see if we can find it out. So again, W3 Schools is coming up, and it says HTML DOM element style property. What the hell could that be, right? So right here, document.getElementById .style. So okay, cool. This could be our answer right here. So we already did. We've already used document.getElementById when we grabbed onto the button. So now we need to use it again. So let's put an ID on the body because that's what's gonna control the background color. So let's do that. Let's just say, and it's basically we're gonna do the same thing we did with the button to grab onto it. So we'll give the body an ID of body. Okay. And then we'll say document.getElementById. Oops. .getElementById. Again, and the same syntax as before, parentheses, quotes. We named our body with an ID of body, same thing. And then after that, we can put .style. And so this example says is changing the color, but I bet you if instead of color we use the keyword background, like with CSS, it'll affect the background instead. So we'll say .style.background equals, and we want green. Save. All right, let's see if we did it here. Moment of truth. Oh, we did it. So that is the importance of comments in pseudocode, guys, writing your stuff out step by step. Now, I just looked all that stuff up just to like show you what I'm talking about. Obviously, I could have done that in like 2 seconds, but what would be the point of you just watching me do that, right? But I want you to remember this lesson in later lessons and as we go through this course, because I'm eventually in later lessons coming up pretty soon, actually, I'm going to give you challenges to do on your own where I want you to pause the video and do them. And you're going to want to be using pseudocode to write out step by step what you have to accomplish to get to actually do the challenge, okay? It's very good practice, and it'll put you miles ahead of other like junior developers that are just learning programming, because a lot of them don't even do this, because a lot of people don't even teach this for some reason. I don't know why, but very important. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm going to see you guys in the next video.